Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of AI, specifically how researchers are finding ways to make smaller language models, more
More efficient.
capable, more efficient.
And surprisingly powerful.
Yeah. And that's what we'll be exploring today with this research paper. Greater. Gradients over reasoning make smaller language models strong prompt optimizers.
It is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's a really fascinating technique. And honestly, it could change the way we think about AI, especially for folks who, they're interested in the future of AI, but maybe don't have a deep technical background.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to understand just how this new technique, Greater, helps these smaller language models work smarter, not harder, maybe even, rivaling the smarts of these giants like GPT-4.
It's an exciting prospect.
It really is. And the paper kind of jumps right into this idea of prompt engineering.
Right. And prompt engineering, basically, it's all about how we give instructions to these language models.
Right.
Like imagine giving someone directions in a city they've never been to before.
Right.
You have to be super precise with your language or they'll end up completely lost.
And I imagine with AI, it's even more crucial because even small changes in wording can dramatically change the output.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot in the wording to get the AI to do what we want.
Makes sense. So how do we typically go about refining these prompts?
Well, traditionally, it's been a bit of a brute force process, often relying on, get this, even larger language models to judge the results.
So we use massive AI to train smaller AI.
In a way, yes. There are existing methods out there, things like APE, APO, PE2, TextGrad. They all use textual feedback to try and optimize the prompts, but they really depend on these massive, expensive AI models to tell them what works best.
Okay, so if we're trying to make AI more accessible, more usable, that doesn't really seem ideal, right? To rely on these, behemoth AI systems.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? It's like needing a giant power plant to run a single light bulb. Not very efficient. And this is where Grader steps in. It offers a completely different approach. It uses something called gradients over reasoning.
Okay, gradients over reasoning. Break that down for us. What does that even mean?
All right. Think of it like fine-tuning a recipe. You tweak the amount of one ingredient, see how the taste changes, and use that feedback to refine the recipe further.
So kind of like trial and error, but with AI.
Exactly. But in this case, the gradients measure how changing parts of the prompt affects the model's performance.
So we're measuring how well the AI understands what we're asking it to do.
Yes. But here's the real kicker. Grader doesn't just focus on the model's final answer. It goes deeper, analyzing the reasoning process the model uses to get there.
So it's not just about getting the right answer, it's about understanding how the AI got there.
Precisely. By looking at the reasoning, Grader can figure out which parts of the prompt lead to better reasoning. Then, it uses that to optimize the prompt.
So Grader's kind of like peeking under the hood of the AI, seeing how all the parts work together.
A great analogy. And that's what makes it so powerful.
But wouldn't that make the training even more complex? I mean, analyzing the whole reasoning process.
Well, it does add complexity, yes. But the payoff is huge. Grader simplifies things by breaking it down into 3 steps. First step, candidate proposal.
So the AI is basically brainstorming different ways to phrase the prompt, kind of like exploring different routes on a map to get to a destination.
Exactly. It tries different approaches to see which one, which wording leads to the most effective instructions. And then we move on to step 2, reasoning generation and extraction.
Okay, walk us through that.
So here, the model takes the proposed prompt and it actually thinks through the steps to solve the task. It's almost like we're seeing its thought process laid out in front of us.
Well, like a thought map.
Yeah, exactly like that. And that brings us to the final step, gradient over reasoning-driven candidate selection.
Another mouth.
I know, right? But it's simpler than it sounds. So this is where those gradients we talked about earlier come into play.
Right.
The model evaluates how well it's reasoning at each step.
Right.
And it uses that information, that gradient information, to choose the best prompt.
So it's picking the prompt that led to the clearest, most logical reasoning.
Exactly. And this makes the learning process so much more efficient. It's kind of amazing.
It's like the AI is learning from its own mistakes.
Yeah, in a way. And the results are pretty impressive. They tested Grader on all sorts of tasks, math problems, logic puzzles, even those common sense reasoning challenges that AI sometimes struggles with.
So how do they even measure how well it's doing?
Well, they use these benchmark data sets, things like GSM-8K, Big Bench Hard, and Folio.
Okay. For those of us who, haven't spent our lives in the AI world, what do those even tell us? What are those?
Think of them like standardized tests for AI.
Got it.
And on those tests, Grader consistently outperformed other prompt optimization methods, especially when working with smaller language models.
So it's like it's punching above its weight class.
Exactly. And get this. In some cases, the smaller models with the prompts optimized by Grader, they perform just as well or even better than prompts optimized by these giants like GPT-4.
Wow. So we could have the power of these massive AI models in a smaller, more efficient package.
That's the idea.
That could really change how we use AI, in everyday life.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the potential impact.
Yeah, what are some of the implications, as this technology continues to evolve?
Well, for one, it could make powerful AI tools accessible to way more people. Right now, working with these large language models, it takes a ton of computing power. It's expensive.
So it's really only accessible to big companies, research labs, not your average person.
But with Grader, maybe not anymore, we could democratize access to powerful AI.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. And then there's the efficiency part. Lots of AI applications rely on cloud computing, right?
Yeah.
Sending data back and forth to these massive servers.
Yeah.
But if these smaller models can do the job just as well, we could run a lot of these applications locally on your phone, your laptop.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's more convenient and it's more sustainable. Uses less energy.
Yeah, for sure. What else?
Oh, and then there's customization. With smaller models, we can fine-tune them for specific jobs, specific fields. Imagine an AI assistant that's trained to understand legal jargon, or one that analyzes financial data.
So AI that's tailored to specific needs, that's pretty exciting.
Right. And it's all because these models can learn and adapt on their own. No need for those bigger models to constantly supervise.
They're becoming more independent.
Exactly. And that brings up some pretty interesting questions. I mean, if they're capable of this level of self-learning, what does that mean for our ability to understand how they're making decisions?
That's a good point. Like, can we still understand their reasoning?
Right. That's one of the big challenges with AI, the black box problem. We often don't know why an AI makes a particular decision.
But you're saying that the focus on reasoning with Grader could help with that.
Potentially, yeah. Since it emphasizes the reasoning process, we get a much more detailed view of how the model reaches its conclusions. Maybe that leads to more transparent AI systems, systems where we can actually see the logic.
That's crucial, especially as we start to rely on AI for more sensitive things, like healthcare or finance. We need to be able to trust that the AI is making decisions for the right reasons. But do you think by focusing on the reasoning so much, will it make it harder to explain the model's decisions in, simpler terms?
Oh, that's a good point. It's definitely something to think about. Finding that balance is going to be key as we, develop and deploy these AI models.
Right. We need to make sure the reasoning process is transparent, but also understandable, even to people who aren't AI experts. Yeah. It's a tough one for sure. But it's something we got to think about as we, as we get deeper into this AI world, this Grader technique. It feels like it's more than just a technical thing. It could really change how we approach AI development and what it means for, for the future.
Definitely. It's like a starting point for a whole bunch of new possibilities and, of course, new challenges too, right?
Right.
But it's important to remember that this is still early days. We're just scratching the surface here. There's still so much more to learn about what this technique can do and what it can't do.
We've opened this door,
Yeah.
and now we've got to figure out what's inside.
Right.
So for everyone listening out there, let's bring this back to you for a second. Imagine a world where your smartphone can run these really sophisticated AI applications. And it's all thanks to, these smaller, more efficient language models powered by Grader.
Think about education. We could see personalized learning tools that really adapt to each student, giving them, custom support, instruction, or even healthcare. We could have AI that helps doctors diagnose patients by, analyzing medical images, data.
So AI that helps us learn better, AI that helps us, helps us stay healthy.
Yeah. It's about giving everyone access to the power of AI, not just a select few.
Right. But with that greater access comes a greater responsibility, right?
Of course.
We need to make sure we're using this technology ethically, thoughtfully. We've talked about transparency and how Grader could help make AI more understandable. But what about the risks?
Absolutely. AI is becoming more and more a part of our lives.
Yeah.
So we need to be asking these tough questions like, could these smaller AI models be used for the wrong reasons? To spread misinformation?
Yeah.
or create harmful content.
Those are good points. What about jobs? As AI gets better at doing things that humans used to do, how does that affect employment? Will certain jobs just disappear?
Yeah, it's something we have to consider. AI development can't just be about technology. It has to be about progress that benefits everyone.
Right. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Grader, we want to leave you with this. We've seen how this technique can revolutionize AI, make it more efficient, more accessible, and maybe even more, understandable. But it's up to all of us to make sure we use this technology responsibly, ethically.
Definitely.
So, what do you think? What excites you most about Grader? Are there downsides we should be thinking about?
Keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts.
Because, knowledge is powerful, especially when we share it, discuss it. The future of AI, it's something we'll create together.
Well said.
Until next time, keep diving deep.